the students. And so that's why, and am I still there? I'm still there. Okay. So that's why, one of the things we're going to talk about this morning is one of my favorite topics, and that is spelling. And you're thinking, why are we talking about spelling, man? That's one of the least important things we do. And I will contend with you, it's not. I will contend with you that most of you don't know how to teach spelling. That'll be my contention going forward, and we'll see what you think at the end of this. See if you maybe agree with me, and see if maybe you have some new insights at the end of it. And anyway, so I'm pretty excited to actually teach my very favorite topic to talk about, and that is spelling, because spelling is really about a structure in the language, and we'll find out that our language really is structured. So I'm going to probably make them nuts, because I probably will go up and down and come at you and talk. We're going to find out who is most comfortable. I'll need to know that if you're comfortable to talk with me or not, because some of the things, in order to help you understand how to actually teach the structure of language, we'll have to have some of you work with me on that a little bit as we go forward. Okay? You good with that? We'll see. Okay? All right, let's move. So why is learning to spell more difficult than learning to read? This is what I'm talking about. The first two sessions I'm doing today, the two sessions today, really are interactive. We're going to work together, all right, on a lot of things. That's why you're not going to find me behind that podium. First of all, when I stand behind a podium, I'm usually peeking over the top of it. And so it's really super uncomfortable to be behind them. Anyway, but I do really want you to talk to me. Why is learning to spell more difficult than learning to read? Because it is.
Sometimes it's not spelled the way it sounds.
Okay, because it's maybe not spelled the way it sounds, but even when we read those words, we're reading them, they're the same words.
Yeah, because there's multiple spellings for different sounds.
Yes, but we're still reading those same words.
If you're trying to spell it, that's different than just reading it.
Okay, because when you're reading them, they're on
the paper already.
They're already right in front of you, right? You're not having to generate it, all right? When you're spelling it, you're having to generate it. Let me give you this really interesting thing. I think this is incredibly interesting. I have a good friend. She's a few years older than I am, and she had a stroke recently. And the result of the stroke was that she can no longer read, okay? She was an avid reader. We were in a book club together. So now she listens to all the books on tape. So she does audiobooks now because she can't read. Now she is relearning how to read, and that's been an arduous task for her. In her, I think she is around 81 right now, but she's relearning to read. Anyway, but she can spell anything. So she can still text, but once she texts on her phone, she doesn't know what she wrote. Or if she writes a card to someone, she can't read it again after she writes it. Really interesting, huh? So those two things, while you think that's in exactly the same place in your brain, it is not, all right? So spelling is exactly what was just said. It's generating those things, and they are very related, but they're not exactly the same and not done in exactly the same place in the brain. All right, I want to share with you one more thing about me and how I have approached working with kids over my career. I didn't start out in the place of wanting to work with kids with learning differences. In fact, in my very first interview, this is how old I am. Have been around education a really long time. I've been around education since the law 94-142 was passed. You all have studied that in education? When 94-142 was the law that was passed that said all children now are entitled to education. That is the law that let children with special needs, all children, come to public education, okay? It was passed in the mid-'70s, and I've been around education since that was passed. So when I first graduated from college as a speech therapist, I was asked, so how would you feel about working with these kids? And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And I found out pretty quickly that if you didn't want to do that, jobs were scarce. Those were where the jobs were at that point. So I ended up in God's design. That ended up being my first job, working with children with learning differences. And I ended up loving it. And I'm sure God was laughing in heaven because that was his plan for me. And then as I became like this just curious person as I moved from different kinds of learning challenges, really wanting to know what is the problem here? Why can't this child understand this? What will help him learn what it is that'll take him to a different place in understanding? And I started with kids who had been in institutions for all of their lives. I won't go down those stories. Those are really interesting stories. But then to kids, I was a speech therapist, so then I was with children in public ed who had much more minor problems. And then I went, I stayed home with my children for a few years. And then at the Christian school where my children were going to school, they wanted to start a program for kids with learning differences. And they asked me if I would train to work in that program. And that happened to be the NILD program. And I started then trained in that, and started a program at our Christian school for kids that learn differently. And my curiosity just got the best of me. Every child that came into that room, why couldn't they do that? And so it became just really a quest with every child that came in front of me, every child in our building that was struggling, what was going on there, and how could we help them? And that is how all of everything within me that I learned, that I grew, that I wanted to know about, it's how I grew my understanding of the kids. It wasn't just I went and took more classes and understood a little. Everything I knew, everything I've learned, I can trace back to a child who didn't get it. And then I started trying to figure out how I was going to help that child, or how I was going to help a teacher help that child. And I studied to find out what to do with that child. All right? So a lot of that is going back to even the whole spelling thing. All right, so, he says I'd be able to read back there. I am 70 years old. I cannot read anything that's back there at all, so I'm going to be turning to read here. I really can't read that. Anyway, so we know that spelling is much more difficult than reading. It is. But we treat spelling as an afterthought. Yes? We treat spelling, shake your heads, yes. We treat spelling as an afterthought. How many of you spend more than 15 minutes a day teaching spelling? Yep, not many hands, because we don't. That's the truth. Be honest. We teach spelling in our classrooms and as an afterthought. Many believe every student can master spelling because they only need to memorize the words, right? And that is so wrong. That is not how we learn to spell. It is not. And you know that because you have students who memorize those words and then next week they can't spell them. Correct? So it is this futile thing that you do every week, and that futile thing you do every week is fairly useless. Just saying. Okay? Traditional spelling instruction, that thing you do every week with that book and that list of words that they take home and they write them 4 times or 5 times or whatever you ask them to do, and the little exercises that they do, is fairly not worth the time that they're putting into it for the most part, because really a lot of kids just intuit spelling anyway. So anyway, it's based on rote memorization, which we have found is not the way kids learn to spell. It's emphasized visual memorization. It's seen as a separate subject. It's a weekly paper and pencil test. and there's little opportunity for authentic integration. And so, for the most part, it is pretty much a useless exercise that we do every week, and it doesn't really help kids learn to spell. Now, do kids learn to spell? They do. They're learning to spell, though, in spite of what you're doing. And the kids then who can't spell are not learning anything from this weekly exercise that you do. Just saying. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. I'm sorry to make you feel like, then why am I doing this? But that is my purpose. My purpose today is to make you feel, then why am I doing this? All right? So, my purpose today in talking about spelling is to make you say, man, I need to know more. Man, I need to learn more about how to do this. Because that becomes like pretty much if you're an elementary teacher, if you're a middle school teacher who is tasked with teaching English and language arts, if you are a middle school and high school teacher who teaches sciences and whatever, you need to understand how spelling works. Because even if you are teaching the vocabulary of your subject and your students don't know how to spell those words, that is up to you to help them understand how to do that. It's up to you to help them understand what the generalizations are that will help them spell the words that they are supposed to know and understand for your subject. That's your responsibility. All right? Here's a couple of things. All right, so I pay attention to what's going on. These are from my granddaughter, who is now in second grade, but these came from her first grade practice when I was at her house. My granddaughter lives in Nashville. These came from some practice papers that she brought home while I was down there. These are totally worthless exercises in learning to spell. These things they do, this configuration thing, this little box thing, does not help kids learn to spell. They do not remember words from doing that. Don't do it. Don't even bother. It's a waste of time. This thing over here with the little dots doesn't help one bit. Doesn't help learn to spell, okay? It might help get some spacing with words and letters. It might help with that, the spacing thing. But as far as being able to, spell, doesn't help, okay? All right, now let's talk about it. So in our language, we have 26 letters, 40 phonemes, 250 graphemes. Graphemes are the ways to spell the different sounds. So we have 26 letters, 40 phonemes. Do you know what phonemes are? Phonemes? The sounds. We have 40 sounds in our English language. We have 26 letters in our alphabet. We have 40 sounds in our language. We have 250 ways to spell those sounds, okay? So spelling is complex, but I won't even ask you because it's written right there in front of you. Only 4% of our words are true spelling demons. Only 4% of our words don't follow the rules. Our English language is actually very principled. If you know and understand the rules, you would say typically, right, if I'd have asked you, how many words don't follow the rules? You would have told me 50%. At least half of them don't follow rules, right? That's what you'd have said. They don't follow the rules. But it's really only 4%. The problem is you don't know the rules, okay? The rest of the words, 96% of our words can be easily known or predicted based on the conventions of the English language. Now, I will tell you, when I was a speech therapist, when I started learning about this, and honestly, I did not learn this in my college education. I didn't learn it, anywhere other than in my own self-discovery, working with children who could not spell. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do to help these kids know how to spell? And the book is right down there. It's called How to Teach Spelling. I started studying in that book. The other book was called SLD, Solving Language Difficulties. And I started using those books with my students and going, golly gosh, there are ways to understand how to spell. And I started studying them myself and becoming terribly curious about how this worked. And then it came to the point where I started talking to teachers when I would help my students. Did you know that that list they have this week follows this particular rule? And the teacher would say to me, I didn't know that. And I said, yeah, if you tell the kids about this, they'll be able to spell that whole list without really studying it. Just give them that rule. And anyway, it came to the point that I would have kids knocking on my door in the classroom. The teacher sent me down to find out, why is this word spelled like that? Yeah, it was fun. Became really fun. Made the kids in the school even more curious about words because teachers started to become curious about why those words were spelled that way. It's fun, all right? So our research understanding, learning to spell is a complex, intricate cognitive and linguistic process rather than one of rote memorization. It's a linguistic process. Students do not learn spelling words in isolation. Instead, they use prior knowledge and understandings to help make decisions and form concepts about how to spell new words. So here's new understanding, especially coming from fMRI and understanding how the brain is working. So we used to think, truly, in my early study of all of this, they really did think that the brain made pictures of words and we memorized them and we just remembered how words work. They understand now in the 2000s, and this really is new research, that the brain really is, every time it reads and spells, breaking down words. And it remembers the patterns. So what you have to do is you have to teach the patterns of the language, because that is what our brain is focusing in on every time it reads and spells. It is focusing in on the patterns. And the children who can read and spell well do that intuitively. About 60% of our kids can just read and spell really well, basically without us. Sorry, you give them some clues, they just get it, all right? But those kids who don't just get it really need us to help them see those patterns. That's what your job as a teacher is to help them see the patterns. And so here it is. You can't help them see the patterns if you don't know the patterns, or if you're not using a curriculum that teaches the patterns. Okay? We'll keep going. Patterns are the most effective and efficient way to teach regular and predictable words in English. From the very beginning, our brain is hardwired to recognize patterns. This is fascinating new research, and that is, I was just like fascinated a few years ago to listen to a gentleman out of France, I think, speak about this discovery that they really have come across. And this is finally, what has made the people from the University of Columbia say we were wrong. Are you aware of that? That for so many years, the Teachers College at Columbia University, as well as out of Ohio State University, Pennell, what's their names? The people that were really driving how we were teaching reading in our schools, in the whole language program, Fountas and Pennell. Those people were driving how reading was being taught from a whole language perspective. And most schools were buying into it. Most curriculum was built around that. They were poo-pooing phonics. They were saying, use the pictures. They were using, look at the whole word. They were saying, use the context clues, do all of that. And they were saying the phonics really doesn't matter because the brain uses the whole thing. And they were wrong, because we now have the imaging and the understanding that they've realized in the 2000s from looking deep into the brain, that it is the patterns of the language. It is the pieces and the units. It's the graphemes. It's the phonemes. It is the pieces of the words that the brain looks at in order to read and to spell. Phonics matters. The patterns of the language matter. And we must teach from that perspective if all children are going to read and spell well. We must. And if that isn't the curriculum you're using, then you really got to change your curriculum. And so we have, I think, hopefully come that direction in reading. Now we better get there with spelling too, because we have not gotten there with spelling. Almost every curriculum still is not honing in on the patterns of the language. Or if it is honing in on the patterns, it's still not teaching the rule that goes with that pattern. And I'm going to show you that for sure as we go through this presentation. As a child grows and develops, the brain continues to search for invariant features and patterns when it tries to learn something new, including letters, words, and even spelling. So here's the deal. For all of these years, children were learning basically in spite of us. Now let's come to the point where children are learning with us, and we're like all working together to the same end. Let's all like get kids along the path of understanding how this language is working and see more and more kids successfully reading and spelling. Patterns. It's really fun to find the patterns. It's like a great hunt. I encourage you. I hope I spark your curiosity. All right. 1 rule, 3 applications. Who's brave?
We have a word with a short vowel that ends.
Oh, no, you can't know it. You can't know it. I can't help the other people. I can't help the other people understand what to do with their students if you know it. Okay? Because here's the thing. One of the things that you do to help kids learn these rules is you don't teach the rules. You don't say to the children, today, boys and girls, we're going to learn a new rule, and I'm going to teach it to you. If you want kids to truly understand a rule, they best learn it by discovering it. They best learn it by sitting together with 3 other kids, sorting words and saying, okay, what's the same? They best learn it by detecting it, by figuring it out, all right? And so I would have given the students these words on some cards, and you'll find that in a program called Words Their Way, and they would sort them, or you just write them on note cards. It's not a big, hard thing to do. You just write them on a set of note cards. And they sort them into words, and they say, okay, what's the same? So what is the same about these words? What's the same about those words that have CK at the end? What's the same? They're all short vowels. And so what's the same then about... or they all have short vowels and then a CK. So these are all words that have the sound k at the end. And so when do we use a CK at the end of a word? After a short vowel. All right? And then when do we use a K? Just a K. Okay, after a long vowel pattern or a long vowel sound. Okay, or after a consonant. All right, this isn't a mystery. It isn't a matter of practicing and studying. It isn't a matter of practicing those words and memorizing which ones need the CK. All right, although that's what we've done for years. It's a matter of, it's just a rule. If it's a short vowel, give it the CK. If it's a consonant or a vowel pattern, a long vowel, give it the K. That's it. Works every time. And yet, I see, do I have one after here? Don't know. Let me look. Yep, here we go. So here we go. This is a great page. All right? And I put this here because there it is. There's the words. They even have them sort them. But in this curriculum, they never tell them the rule. They just sort them. There's no place it's like, so when do you use the CK? There's never a place where they write the rule or they say, put the CK after a short vowel. They just sort them. And it's a big memory thing. And it's not a memory thing. If you're using a curriculum that doesn't teach the rule in the workbook, or there's no place for the student to identify the rule, then you better be the one helping them find the rule, helping them write the rule, put it somewhere. Or you better find a different curriculum, all right, where they are identifying what the rule is for that. And I didn't just pick that page. I mean, really, in that curriculum, there was no place. Yes, they sorted the rules, the words, but there's no place where they identified what the rule is for the CK. Craziness. So, good spellers may extract and internalize patterns like this with increasing exposure to text, because that is what they do. They just start to do it. They might not be able to tell you the rules. My son was a really good speller, like just natural, really good speller. He went really far in the ACSI spelling bee. He, by one word, missed going to the National Spelling Bee. And I will still, to this day, lay that to the person who was doing the pronouncing. But that said, he was just really good at it, all right? But, he just intuited all of that. I don't think he could tell you the rules. He just knew how words were spelled. Poor spellers, however, usually do not and must be taught in a step-by-step explicit manner. So we've heard explicit phonics matter, right? Are you hearing that now? Are you using phonics explicitly in your K1, 2, 3 programs? Yes? Yes. Yes? Now you need to use it in spelling as well. They should, and really in K1, 1 and 2, they should really closely overlap. Your phonics and spelling should be going right side by side. Like they should be working right together in your curriculum program. All right, so what are the developmental phases a little bit of spelling and actually reading? But partial in level 2 of that, partial. Oh, my watch always thinks I'm talking to her. Partial alphabetic or semi-phonetic spelling is a level 2, where kids are learning to spell. It's in kindergarten and to second grade, where you get a lot of inventive spelling. Inventive spelling is okay. My kindergarten teacher called it kid writing. That's an okay thing. It's a phase. And you need to let them work their way through that because they are learning how the language is working. And it's a good phase to be in. So they're representing most sounds. You're sure they're hearing all the sounds in the language. And we'll talk about that here in a minute, okay? And then level 3 is where they have full alphabetic or phonetic spelling, where there's some invented spelling, and some correct spelling. So they're kind of half and half. And then at level 4, which they should be hitting at 2nd and 3rd grade, where correct spelling of most consonant, vowel, consonant, and silent E words and simple common patterns are correctly spelled. So it's just there is a progression of phases in spelling that you'll watch your students go through, and you need to allow them. And this isn't really related to spelling tests of things that you're helping them like learn correct spellings of words and patterns that you're giving them and patterns that they're preparing for to take a test. But instead in like free writing as they're writing sentences and stories and things like that, because you do want them doing those kinds of things. So here's my granddaughter This is a first grade thing where they're writing about their egg. But I really love this because you can see that she knows all the sounds. She doesn't know all the spelling patterns yet. She says, my egg has the color of sun. My egg has an Easter color on it. And my egg has a picture. Do you see picture? I love picture. P-I-K-S-H-R. A picture in the middle, M-I-D-L. Okay? She has all the sounds represented, but she doesn't, in this first grade place, know how to spell middle yet. She doesn't have all of that spelling pattern. But she is using like really great words, okay? So this is a phase of spelling that you want kids to be doing, all right? But certainly she doesn't have all of it. But she has consonant vowel patterns are right. And consonant vowel consonant patterns are right. She has the patterns right that she should for a first grade speller. It takes about 2 years for children to figure out the English alphabetic principle and use it consistently. So she has a lot of the now wait a minute. Oh, let me go back. This takes me back. She has a lot of the alphabetic principle correct here on this, okay? And in what she was writing there, she understands the alphabetic principle of the language, but she doesn't have automatic spelling down yet. High frequency words and grade appropriate patterns and English conventions and principles should then become what determines spelling instruction. So later on, in those first 2 years, you're mostly just working on words that follow rules. A lot of times what we do in early grades, which I really disagree with, is we start having them spell days of the week and months of the year and stuff. No. In those early grades, you're learning patterns. You're learning consonant, vowel, consonant. You're learning silent E. You're learning patterns. Not necessarily, like in those early grades, you want to give kids words and patterns that work every time. Give them things where that when they sound them out, they spell exactly the way they sound. Don't go to those things that are more difficult yet. They don't need those things. They can write words as she did without them. They can still write things like color in their free writing. They can still enjoy the opportunity to write a little story, okay? And it doesn't matter that they're not all spelled, but what she is spelling are words that follow the alphabetic principle. That's what you want them learning in first and second grade, is the alphabetic principle, and that they depend on the fact that it works, okay? That's where they should be in those early grades. And then after that, you start getting into the more challenging conventions of the language and moving forward. And then into things that determine, like the more difficult words, or the words that perhaps, I won't say they don't follow the rules, but they perhaps have different and more strange kind of patterns in them. Yes?
Can you help us understand what's automatic spelling?
Automatic spelling means I just pretty much know those patterns and I know how to use them in words. So,
Decoding?
well, decoding is reading. Encoding is spelling. So,
Okay.
I automatically know how to apply rules. That is automatic spelling. I automatically know how to apply the rules here. And that's what you're moving towards. And again, no matter how you teach spelling, those kids who spell well are going to do it. All right? They will do it. Your purpose in teaching spelling in a way that you're going to give kids an understanding of the patterns will enhance the spelling and the understanding for those kids who spell well anyway. But it will give the students who struggle with that a lot more clues to know how to spell the words that they need. All right, here's another rule called the floss rule. Tell me about this rule. What do you see? Okay, double consonants for single syllable words. For F, L, and S, yes. It is Z too, but Z only has a couple of words. Buzz is one, okay? Fuzz, okay. So, yes. So this rule, in my world, we memorized it. Words ending in F, L, S, or Z are after in a single syllable word ending in F, L, S, or Z, double the F, L, S, or Z, as in muff, spell, miss, and buzz. Learning spelling patterns using keywords is like really a great way to teach spelling patterns. Giving kids keywords that fit those is a great way to teach them. But, you know, that would depend on the curriculum that you would choose to use. Today, my mission is just to try to make you curious about all the different patterns that do exist in the language. And I even can't give you all of them. But this would be one that would fall into like a second grade place, that you would want to give kids this pattern because it's one that comes up really pretty easily or pretty soon. I didn't put second grade words necessarily on this list because I'm talking to adults, but there's lots of words that second graders are going to write, and even first graders in their free writing that would follow this rule. So this is a rule that would make a great spelling list. Okay, that single syllable words that have a short vowel, and your kids need to understand short and long vowels. They also would need to understand open and closed syllables down the road. That's another whole thing for you to understand, types of syllables, but I'm not going there today. But anyway, but this rule is one that should be taught probably in even a first grade place. It's a pretty simple rule. All right, here's another one. Now this is a more challenging one. This is now you fourth and fifth graders, teachers. Here's another word sort. There's a pattern here that helps us know these words all end in us. Okay? And you would have in the past said, you know, just have to memorize whether they're US or OUS. This isn't a memory thing. This is a for sure how they end, whether they're US or OUS. Okay? So, my question becomes the same. You ask a good question. You give the kids the words, they sort them. And the question is, what's the same about the words in the first list and the words in the second list? What's the same? Right, all the words on the left have US. What's the same about those words? What's the same about focus, genius?
Where it's accented. Well, there's US and the other one's OUS.
Yes, that's the obvious, the same. But why are these US and those are OUS? This is fifth grade. This is fifth grade. Where are the middle school teachers? Oh, come on, put your hands up. Middle school teachers. All right, we're the high school teachers. Okay? He is so humorous. That is a perilous journey. What a righteous young man. Oh man, that was contagious. Oh, those are all. What are these? Tell me again. Nouns. Those are. What are these? OUS are always adjectives. US are always nouns. Every time. Every time. Okay. Every time. It's not a mystery. And yet, in the spelling book that you would have in 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade, it would just be a list. Memorize it. But it's not a mystery. Right? Go look at a spelling book or a 7th grade spelling book. Again, they just have a list. Okay? The thing that's really interesting, especially the OUS, I mean, a lot of those are just the root word with the OUS ending, right? Perilous, peril, humor, right, there's an E in there. They are really, they're treated as if they were difficult words to spell when really they are not. They follow really simple rules. Even copious is copy. Change the Y to I and add the OUS, right? They follow rules. And the rule is OUS because it's an adjective. Where you would have said before, there's no rule there. Why OUS? When it's a clear rule. Also, you can look at it as OUS is a suffix, where over here US is not a suffix. It's part of a part of the word. All right, moving on. Here's what really matters in teaching the rules. This is what really matters, teacher skill. Many studies show that teacher knowledge of English phonology, orthography, or morphology is needed to teach spelling effectively. This knowledge correlates to spelling gains, especially for weaker spellers. If your knowledge is limited, you have to consider what you can do to build your own skill. Yes?
What's orthography and morphology?
Ooh. If your knowledge is limited, now you have to consider what you can do to build your own skills.
Well, I'm asking.
I know. So anyway, I love that you asked. Thank you. So phonology is the sounds of the language. Okay, phonology. Orthography is how the language is written. It's what we see on the paper, how things are spelled. It's what's on the paper, okay? And morphology deals with the parts of the language and what they mean. It's the meaning of the language. So the word parts, okay, and what they mean. So for instance, phonology, phono deals with sound, and ology is the study of. So the morphology of phonology is the sounds, the study of the sounds of the language. Orthography, ortho refers to writing. And so it's the study of the writing of the language. And morphology, morph is the meaning. And so it's the study of the meaning of the parts of the words. Okay? Yep. We're going to look at that some more. So spelling instruction involves the identification, first of all, of consonant and vowel phonemes. Phonemes are the sounds of the language. Okay? Phonemes are that B says B and C says K or S. All right? Those are the phonemes of the language. And then you have, after that, phoneme-grapheme correspondence. That means that B, which says B, B is the phoneme, and the grapheme is the B, okay? Phoneme, grapheme, correspondence. The orthographic patterns and the position constraints. So, for instance, the long A can be spelled 8 different ways. A baby, A constant E safe, AI sail, AY day, EA great, EIGH 8, EY they, okay? Inflectional suffixes and rules for adding those. There's, ways to add ing and ing and ed and those things. Types of syllables. There's open syllables, closed syllables, and our combination syllables, silent E syllables. We're not going to get into syllable types today. Morphology are the meanings of the parts of the words, Greek roots, Latin roots. That's the 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade part. That's the math part, the science part. If you aren't teaching the morphology of the words in your classes, you are doing your students a big disservice. Because if you give them the morphology of the words, they're going to remember them better, and they're going to do better on the SATs, on the big tests that come down the road. And then high frequency words, which still do matter, that we help kids with high frequency words. All right, phoneme awareness starts first. This is do we have early ed teachers here? Yep.
What are, I know, but some people don't. What are high frequency words?
High frequency words are the words that occur most often in print. So, like was, were, is, and, the ones that occur most. You can go anywhere. If you just put in high frequency words, you'll come up with lots of different lists.
Do they follow
The Dolch list, there's one, the Dolch list is one. Yes?
they follow the rules?
They do for the most part, yes. Some of them you'll say don't, but like was, does, saw, does, starts with, but it's a high frequency word still. It occurs a lot in the language. So, but they're the ones that, a lot of times teachers put them on flashcards for kids to practice, just saying them, but even if you do that, they still should be calling attention to the patterns in the words. Like saw has the S with AW, which is another pattern, pronounced aw.
Do, to.
Yep, and yes. So, and some of those, like do and to, don't follow the open syllable pattern as they should. So there's some things like that are a little on the odd side. All right. Phoneme awareness, 1st and 2nd grade, should happen. Do we have early ed teachers? Yes? No? Early ed? Okay. As in pre-K4, like that kind of early ed? Okay, this is absolutely critical in pre-K4. Lot of work, and in kindergarten and clear through 1st grade. Lot of work on phoneme awareness. Phoneme segmentation and manipulation or lack thereof distinguishes good and poor spellers at all ages. Here's the deal. Children who struggle with reading and spelling, this to me was like amazing. 95% of the children, 95%, this is borne out in research, 95% of children who struggle with reading and spelling have difficulty with phoneme awareness. That has been shown to be true in 1st and 2nd grade, or rather with all kids with reading and spelling difficulties. Now, I would have, at one point in my career, been like I didn't know that. And here's how I learned it. I told you I learned everything because of a student that I worked with. And I learned this because of Katrina. Katrina came to me in 3rd grade as a really poor reader. She came from public ed into our building. reading really probably at a kindergarten, first grade level at third grade. We brought her into our program, and we did everything, dealing with all the visual things that you thought you should be working with to help her learn to read. And through the first year through third grade, she made very little gains. Through fourth grade, she made very little gains. I had her with a different person working, but I was following her progress. And then during that, I decided I should take her at the beginning of her fifth grade year. And during that summer, I did a lot of reading. And I learned about phoneme awareness. She was going into fifth grade, okay? And the very first session that I sat down with her, I asked her, so tell me a word that rhymes with drip. And she looked at me for a long time and she said, I don't know, drop? I was stunned. She's going into fifth grade and this child could not rhyme a word. So I asked her for some more. She could not rhyme a word. And then I started doing some other things. And then I sat, this is truly, truly what happened. I sat in front of her and I started to cry. And I just said, oh, Katrina, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I mean, I've had this experience lots of times. There's a little boy that I worked with in my very early career that I wish I could have back. Because there are things that I know now that I did not know when I worked with Nick. And I wish I could have him back. His dad said to me, don't you think he's really smart? And he just can't, and now I know, yep, he was. And I just didn't know. I didn't know how to reach him then. He and I would have a very different opportunity now, okay? But anyway, that year, when I started dealing with the phoneme awareness issues that she had, and it was really interesting to hear how she pronounced words, when I started paying attention to that, like, when I did a word with her that we have a technique called buzzer, and we did this word, and the word was that I buzzed for her was blunder, and she spelled it and didn't have any trouble remembering those letters. She was in fifth grade, and I said, so what's blunder? And she says, oh, that's that thing that mixes everything up. Okay, like her phoneme awareness was so off, all right? Anyway, when we started really dealing with that, she made 3-year gain in reading that year. 3-year gain. It was like phenomenal, unbelievable when we started dealing with this issue. So if you're an early ed teacher, you really need to know that children must have this skill. They must. So you must work with your children in phoneme segmentation and manipulation and the ability to hear those speech sounds. They must hear them. You must practice them. You must work with them that they can hear all the different sounds in a word. It is really critical if they're going to become good readers. It is critical that you do all kinds of activities with them, that they're hearing the sounds in words. So important at PK4, in kindergarten and in first grade, all right? One of the ways you can do that is just having them lay down chips for the sounds that they hear. And, in other sessions I do a lot of work with phoneme awareness. But this one's just really simple. Anyway, but let me come back to that. I'll come back to this slide. Don't let me forget, all right? But let's look at a couple. How many chips? How many sounds, how many speech sounds do you hear in the word fresh? How many speech sounds? How many, if you were laying down chips for the word fresh, how many speech sounds? I see a 4. I see a 4. I see a 3. I hear another 3. Come on, put your fingers up. Come on. I see 4s and 3s. Okay? All right, so this one would be f, r, e, sh. All right? Remember, 40 phonemes in our language. So blends are separate phonemes. R, okay? R, they're not one phoneme. But a digraph like sh is one phoneme. That's a phoneme together because it just makes one speech sound. You can't separate that. So r, sh, okay? How about in this word? No. How many phonemes? I see lots of twos, okay? All right. In this one, o. Even though there's 4 letters to spell this word, so we have 4 letters, but only 2 graphemes because only 2 speech sounds. So the first grapheme is a KN, the K is silent, and the second grapheme is OW, which spells the O sound, okay? This is not a word you're going to give a first or second grader ever because it follows rules, but it's not easily spelled. First graders and second graders don't need to deal with silent letters. Don't go there. Give them words that follow those CVC and silent E rules, those easily followed rules, okay? But they can. How many speech sounds do you hear? When you're doing phonemic awareness, you're not dealing at all they're not seeing any words. They're just listening to them. How many sounds do you hear in no? And they're thinking N-O, okay? I'm doing this for y'all just to kind of confuse you a little, all right? How about in through? Don't even look at that word. Don't look at it. Think it. Through. How many speech sounds in through? I hear 2s and 3s. We have r and oo. R, oo. Okay? Sting. Threes and 4s. T. I. NG, is a phoneme itself, okay? All right. Another thing to do with phonemes is to have kids, if you had no, how would you say that backwards? Own. Just turn it around because it's o. Now you want own, right? Own. Turn it around, right? Okay? All right. Give me another one backwards. How about pat? What would pat be backwards? Pat would be? Tap. Okay? This is good to do with kids while you're standing in line with them. Who can tell me pat backwards? Who can tell me top backwards? You know, those kinds of things. Have them just play with words like that. That's so that they're getting it. All right? All right. What's cheat backwards? Teach. All right? Here's a fun one. What's enough backwards? Enough.
Funny.
Yes, it's funny. All right? Oh, back. Nope. I hit the wrong one to go back all the time. Okay, I'm not going to go back because I have to go back through all those dots. That won't work. But let me tell you this. If you have a child in like 2nd or 3rd grade that still can't hear the sounds in words, they need a speech therapist probably at that point to help with that. Because what you have to do with them at that point is you have to help them by helping them. They have to learn it kinesthetically. They have to know the position of those sounds in their mouth. And they have to, and here's the fun thing about understanding the brain. Because the place in the brain where you would feel that in your mouth is right next to the language center in the brain. The parietal center that feels things is right next to the language center in the occipital lobe, I believe. Am I right about that? Anyway, they're right next to each other. And so if you learn it in the parietal lobe, where the feeling center, it will share it over to the language center. And eventually they will hear the sound. The ability to hear speech sounds, the differences in speech sounds, closes around 6 years old. So if kids don't hear speech sounds, hear the differences, by then, they won't. They have to learn to hear them another way. And a speech therapist can help them with that. So if they're really struggling with hearing speech sounds, they're going to need some extra help with that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. All right. Or they can have an ILD educational therapist who can help them with that. All right, let's move on. All right. So the next step then, once they can do phonemes, is phoneme-grapheme mapping. We're moving towards spelling. You have to hear the phonemes first. Then you have to be able to match the phonemes to the graphemes that would spell them. Requires the learner to match the letters or the letter combinations that make the speech sounds that they represent. Okay? You begin with one or simple patterns. Alconin boxes are great for kindergarten and first grade. I really love using movable alphabet, letting them actually have letters that they put out to match those phonemes they're hearing. That also lots of practice with dictation. And at first, only words that are really easily spelled and mapped. That's why I love Saxon phonics. Anybody use Saxon phonics? It's what we use at our school. We use Saxon phonics because Saxon phonics stays in those early couple of years with only the patterns that really follow the rules. We use it for both reading and spelling in our school, and for both our phonics program and our spelling program. So these are what our Alconin boxes are. At first you have those boxes and they put if they hear the word cap, they put a marker for every sound they hear, and then they move to putting the letters for the sound in the boxes that they hear. Just practicing that mapping of sounds to graphemes. So the sound they hear to the grapheme that spells it. And, moving on, that in head, the EA spells the that they hear. All right? Explicit practice in orthographic patterns, phonics programs, things like if you're using a good spelling program, there's going to be explicit practice in different kinds of rules, whether it's the nasal digraphs, so you have a whole spelling lesson dealing with just NGs and NKs, on using the R-controlled spellings, on long vowel spellings and different patterns of ways to spell the long A sound, on the floss rule, on the C and G rules. Do you know the C and G rules? How those are in the different position constraint rules. Instructional methods you should be using for teaching orthographic patterns are things like word sorts and letting the students determine the rules. Word completion pages, a good phonics or spelling. I have a few books down here. Actually, my school right now they have a program that they're using in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I didn't bring that one because it is a teacher-generated program where they make up their own lists. So in 1st and 2nd grade, they're using Saxon phonics. Then they have this program that the teachers make their own. Then in 5th, 6th, and 5th and up, I believe they're using this spelling series that I have up there, which is really great because it is based on the rules, and golly gosh, they actually teach the rule in the program. So I'm excited, and I love it because we have an NILD trained person. Do you know what NILD is, by the way? NILD is the National Institute for Learning Development. And I developed a program at Johnstown Christian School underneath the NILD program where we serve children with learning differences in our school. But in our program, we have a very Orton-based explicit phonics instruction to help kids who are struggling with reading, all right? And it is through that I really did a lot of study to understand reading and spelling, okay? And anyway, and from that is how we started to form what we did in reading and spelling even then in our full school. But this new spelling program that they're using at my former school, I'm no longer at the school. I haven't been since 2017. I retired as head of school, so I started working as an educational therapist working with children, developed this program, led our full program for kids with learning differences. Then I did work for NILD National Program for 5 years as their program director, then came back to Johnstown Christian as head of school and retired, was there for 9 years as head of school and retired from there. And now I teach for Liberty University in the online education program. I teach graduate students. But now I'm looking at second retirement because I'm getting old and it's time. Anyway, but right now at my school, I still call it my school, we have an NILD trained person who helped them get a curriculum that they're using in the middle school, and it is really good. I have books from that sitting up there if you want to take a look. Anyway, okay. So one of the things I suggest in testing for spelling, that when you do tests, that you teach a specific rule during the week, that the weekly list is based on a rule, and that they have some words, because parents will freak if there's no spelling list. So there's a list that the kids are practicing, and it goes along with the rule that you're teaching, and they have a list that they'll practice and do things with, but then also some words on the test that will follow the rule, but they haven't practiced. They have to just apply the rule. That's how you help them learn to apply the rule. So on the test, some that they practiced, some that are new. All right, these are just nasal diagrams. It's just looking at words that end in NG and NK. Here's another word sort. This is, again, learning what you do with x, how you spell x. If you were sorting those words, what do you learn about that sound? When is that an X, and when is it a CKS or a KS? When is it an X? All of those end in the same sound. They all end in x. When's it an X? When it's singular, exactly. Mix and wax and fox are all one thing, where the others are more than one, right? So you have to listen for the sentence. Here, these are position constraint words. Let's look at the OI list. All right, when do we use OY? At the end of words, and usually at the end of what kind of words? One-syllable words. OI comes in the middle of words. So position constraints matter in those particular spellings, and that's what you would have in your list. An understanding in that OI list that OY is at the end. All right. Then dealing with suffixes, inflectional suffixes, change the meaning but not the part of speech, like couch and couches. So, meaning that it changes the meaning, it changes it from one couch to more than one couch, okay? Inflectional suffixes are morphemes. Morphemes are what? What part? They're parts of speech that what? They carry meaning, okay? They change the number, the tense, or the person, all right? So suffixes change the meaning, but not the part of speech. They can often hide at the end of words, okay? Like stop and stopped. What do kids typically do with a word like stopped? They'll put a T on it. So they need to learn that that is a suffix that's at the end of that word, all right? One of the things that we teach in the NILD program is that ED has 3 different sounds. It has ed, t, and d, all right? That it can make those 3 different sounds so that you learn to pay attention to that when you hear that t at the end, that it's usually the ED that is making that sound. You teach this early, the whole idea of inflectional suffixes, because they're needed to write basic sentences. So kids do need to learn early the idea of adding these simple suffixes like ED and S. But it takes a number of years to internalize them as generalizations. This was just a new one that from my granddaughter. I was actually pleasantly surprised at 2nd grade how she quickly already has some of those internalized. And I asked, and my daughter didn't know. Honestly, this was just like 2 weeks ago. If she had actually been taught all of these rules, like change the Y to I in berries and pennies, or add ES, like in peaches. But again, this kind of stuff you will have to teach because you teach rules like change the Y to I and when to do that. Do you know when to do that? When do you change a Y to I? Do you change a Y to I when you changed in play to plays? No, why not? Yes, because there's a vowel before it. Right. Okay, but you do in pennies because there's a consonant before it. Yes. Okay. All right. Again, for the change rules for suffixes, you have to understand them yourself. They're challenging for everybody. So you just begin with inflected forms that don't change base words. Start there. You know, that you're just adding simple suffixes on. But then you go to words that do change, where you have to change the form of the word and learn to do, again, like kids learn to derive the rules. Don't stand in front of them and say, boys and girls, this is the rule for changing the Y to I. When you have a vowel in front of it, change or don't change it, but when you have a consonant in front of it, change the Y to I. I will tell you, when you do that, they will not remember it. They will not. If you have them, or have them sort and see them, have them discover why that's happening, they will remember it. They will. I can't tell you how many times I sent home with my students who had learning disabilities. Remember, I worked with learning challenged kids. Before I ever taught them a rule like that, I would send home a word sort, or in their book, there was a place where they were supposed to sort the words, okay? On that page up above, it told them the rule. But you know kids, they only do what you tell them to do. If I put on the page, sort these words down here, do this, they never read what was up above it, ever. They just sorted the words so that when they came back, I could say to them, okay, now you did that. Let's find out what's the same here. And we could talk about it and derive the rule. When we did that, they could remember the rule. If I just, and I practiced this, like I did it, sometimes I told them the rule and sometimes I had them derive it. I found over and over again, if they figured out the rule, they remembered it. If I told them the rule, they did not. It is just, it's like magic to have them figure it out. There's something that happens here. Well, I know what it is that happens here. It's them using the language. When they talk about it, they remember it. And then the other key to that, and we're going to talk about that this afternoon. This is exactly what we're doing this afternoon. The important thing is them talking about it. So when they spell a word, you know, like on the word that my granddaughter had there, if I had taught my students to change the Y to I rule, and I had a student that wrote pennies and did YS, I would bring them up and say, talk to me about pennies. Why did you spell it that way? And I would have them try to and tell me about it and talk about it. So I would have them, when they wrote a word, whether they wrote it right or wrong, I would have them say the rule again. because in the saying of the rule, they're driving that thing deep. Your children who are good at spelling and at language, they do that internally by themselves. Your children who are not good at it don't. They don't have good internal language. So when you say to them, why did you spell it that way? And you make them say that rule again, they'll remember it more. They have to keep that pathway in everything they do. The more they talk about it, the more they say it, the more they use it, the more they'll remember it. The better they'll be at using the rules. But they have to know the rule. You have to have introduced them. They have to have been able to actually cognitively understand and derive the rule before that'll happen. All right, let's look at this one. Okay? So in deriving the rule for silent E, I love using this one over here. When I like using like because of a certain thing, but anyway, I always put out the word like, and then I have them add those suffixes. I use movable alphabet, all right? So for adding likely, they would leave the E and bring that ending right over, likely. But on liking, what would they do? Take the E off. I want them to physically take that E off and bring the ing over, okay? And then on likeness, they're going to leave it. And then on liked, they're going to drop the E. Again, see, our kids think that they just add a D, but that isn't what they did. They have to drop it and add the ED. That's really important. But what is the rule for adding an ending to a silent E word? What matters? When do you drop the E? When it's a vowel ending. And keep it with a consonant ending. Okay? All right. Moving on. All right, tell me on these. What am I going to do? I don't know what I've got going here next. Oh, back up. Okay. What am I going to do with define? Drop it or leave it? Okay. Guidance. Okay. Graceful. Okay. Bouncing. 19. Okay, that's a good one because kids often spell that word wrong, right? Yep. Courageous. Why am I keeping it? Oh, that isn't why I keep it, though. Why am I keeping the E in courageous? Exactly. If I take it away, what happens to the G? Yes. All right, so I have to keep it, not because it's a rule breaker, but I have to keep it for another rule. Exactly. And in noticeable. Oh, same thing. I lost it. Okay? Same thing. Okay? All right. The doubling rule. All right? This is where I miss having my own computer because I don't know quite where I am in the session, and we need to be done in a few minutes. But if we get to 15 after, we're just going to stop. And my watch is going to talk to me again because I picked it up and looked at it. All right. In the doubling rule, let's go back and look at it. Okay? The doubling rule refers to one syllable, one vowel, and one consonant at the end. So when you have a one-syllable word, I like the 1-1-1 rule because when we have one syllable, one vowel, one consonant at the end, and if the ending begins with a vowel, what do you do with the consonant at the end? Double it, okay? All right, what am I doing with frosting? Am I doubling T? Why not? This is exactly what I make kids say. I make them say it. Snappy, what am I doing? Double it, right. Is Y a consonant or a vowel here? Vowel. Thin, what am I doing? Loomed, what am I doing? Yeah, why?
Because it's a long double O.
Yeah, it's not long, but it's just double, two vowels. Two vowels. Yep, yep. Okay. What am I doing with quit? Why am I doubling it? Because the yes. So the U is not functioning in this as a vowel team with the I. It's functioning with the U, or with the Q, okay? And what am I doing with slim? Am I doubling slim?
No.
Why not?
Because there's a consonant in nuss.
All right. All right, now this goes now. Where's the middle school teachers again? This is the middle school part of this rule. So in the first ones we doubled, and in the second ones we didn't. What's the difference? Or what's the same about the ones we did? We doubled commit, occur, forgot, compel. But we didn't double number, gallop, profit, travel. Yes. All right. So we double when? Commit, occur, forgot, compel. Yes, if the second syllable is accented, you treat it like the 1-1-1 rule. If the second syllable is not accented, you don't double. Every time. Follows a rule that you didn't think was a rule. You just thought, oh, you just have to know that, right? Nope. Follows a rule. Here it is. This is another one of those pages that makes me nuts. Because here's, a rule for adding, they're adding endings in this middle school thing, and what are they doing? They just practice with those stupid configurations. Yeah. And a lot of different, they do have some rules in here, but all the configurations. All right. One more thing, I think we'll finish up here with these last couple things. So, understanding of some syllable rules and some morphology. Yeah. So there's some things to understand about syllable rules that help you know when to double. And if you understand the morphology of the words, it also helps with because the morphology often brings some stability to words. But I want to teach at the bottom, do in some lists, help kids with specific roots, because it also brings stability often to how the words are spelled. If they learn to see the roots in words, especially at those higher levels, they'll do better with spelling patterns. Like confide being the root in confidence. It's just a root word with an ending. And I would actually give them spelling lists that have those kinds of things, that they see the root word with the ending. Like one of the words is confide and the next word is confidence. So they see how those are working together. But I want to look at that first one here on the next slide. I think I do anyway. Well, you going to go? Not going to go. Huh. Oh, it jumped. There it is. All right. So this is another thing that everybody thinks is why? Why are some things doubled and why are they not doubled? This does have to do with syllable rules.
Long vowels not versus short.
Yep.
Syllables.
Yeah, it is. Because it has to do with open syllables and with a long vowel. All right? So when you divide those into syllables, maple is an open syllable with a consonant LE syllable. That's another kind of syllable. So you all, consonant LE, LE always has to have a consonant with it, always, to be a syllable, consonant LE. So you always have to divide with a consonant with the LE. And so all of these words over here have to be divided with a consonant LE. And if you divide them over here, you can still maintain the long sound by the open syllable. But if you divide them over here, you're going to get if you divide them, yeah, you have to have the other one to get a short vowel sound. So long vowels over here, maple, can be, isn't doubled in order to, because you have a long vowel. But it must be doubled when you have a short vowel because of the open and closed syllables. So again, it follows a rule, but you have to understand open and closed syllables to fully understand that. Go understand open and closed syllables. It's really, and we're going to look at this one later again. So I'm going to go past it so you can't see it. Okay. All right. You have these slides just looking at high frequency words. Those are, again, the words that appear often in the language. And you do need to work on teaching those, mixing them in. But increasing the effectiveness of your spelling, you need to choose curriculum that bases learning on patterns and rules. I think that's really the most important thing to do. If you need to take a look at your curriculum, and if it doesn't, then either you need to change it or you need to figure out how you're going to make your curriculum do that. I would say the best thing is to try to change your curriculum. You have to know and understand the generalizations yourself. If you don't understand it, you need to find a way to learn it. There are great resources out there to do that. There are great workshops for it. I think the best one is done by Louisa Moats in her program. It's called Letters, L-E-T-R-S. You can typically get training from that. If you're in Pennsylvania, the IUs do that training on a fairly regular basis. So you just have to look around to find where you can go to get letters training, L-E-T-R-S. And you will be amazed what you will learn in that training. Do encourage what is called discovery learning, help letting kids figure out those rules. Allow student exploration of rules via sorts and other activities. Generate intellectual curiosity. If you get into, I didn't even get into morphology today. That is so much fun to start looking at the morphology of words. Considering time restraints, select the portions of activities that best meet student needs. What I mean by that is, in a spelling curriculum, if there are activities in a book that are useless, don't do them, please. Like say, yeah, that's like a waste of time. Don't have your students waste time because it's in the book. Like really, like in any curriculum. Don't do anything that's a waste of time just because it's there. Like, don't do that, okay? You hear me? I am giving you permission. Don't do that. Yeah, there are lots of things in books that are a total waste of time. Don't do that. All right? Avoid telling students that English is crazy. Do not say that in your classrooms. English is not crazy. It is very principled. All right? And avoid telling the students the rules first. Students remember best what they've thought about and understand. So the goal is to make sense of print and how it represents speech. Keep them active in the process of learning. Spelling isn't any different than anything else that you teach. It's a matter of exploration and learning. All right, there you go. Letters, I have it at the bottom. Language essentials for teachers of reading. That is a great way to learn. If you don't have any other way, get How to Teach Spelling and start working your way through that book, okay, or Words Their Way. And there's, I think, some references there, but How to Teach Spelling. All right, hope you got something from that. silver cup with my Coke. I need it. What did I? Nah, I need my Coke.
How was that? Great. Well, be looking forward to more. But now we're going to have our preset marketing rep come up, and they're the sponsor of our lunch. And preset marketing, they represent a lot of great tools for us, but the big thing is the press products. So this is Amy. She'll come up, share a little bit with us before we go to lunch.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay, great.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to sponsor the lunch for you guys. And it really is BJU Press that's sponsoring the lunch. Preset Marketing is the sales arm for BJU Press. Like he mentioned, we represent a few other things, but they all complement BJU Press. That's the main thing. But we do have Let's Go Learn, which is an online assessment resource, and also has some online like remedial resources as well, and then things like interactive touch panels and some things like that. So let me know if you have some ed tech needs in your schools, and I can tell you more about those. But with BJU Press, I wanted to just let you know about a few, really some quick facts and some new resources that we have. So first of all, you may not be aware, but BJU Press takes their academic rigor and biblical worldview very seriously. If you're using any BJU Press, you're probably aware of that. But there is an academic oversight team. They do a lot of the research. They check on standards, best practices, what's recent, and they are always working with every single revision of our textbooks to make sure that we're giving you the best resources that you can have. And then something new that they developed this year is an expanded scope and sequence. So we've had these in the past where it's maybe half the size of this, but this gives you a lot more detail to help you kind of map out and see what things are covered in each textbook. So that's on the academic side. On the biblical worldview side, there is a biblical worldview shaping team. So when I first started this job over 8 years ago, I talked a lot about biblical integration. And we've kind of actually gotten away from that term because it's more than just kind of making connections to the Bible. It is about shaping a world view. And so that is planned very intentionally through every single textbook. And this is a new resource. This is a biblical worldview scope and sequence. So you can flip through here. You can go to Bible, which that seems kind of obvious. But then you can go to math and science and heritage studies and language arts. And you can see how those biblical worldview themes are mapped across every single textbook. So this is a great resource for you. And then if you are using any BJU Press, I want to make sure that if you haven't heard about or started using Trove, that's our new technology platform. So these are the main things that BJU Press makes them unique, is the combination of this academic rigor, biblical worldview, and educational technology. There's lots of resources on there for students and teachers. Students, if you purchase products for them, but the teachers, there's going to be PowerPoints, there's videos, there you have access to e-textbooks of everything for you to be able to use in the classroom. And if you're a previous user of TTO and haven't gotten switched over to that, come and talk to me. Or if you have questions about it, I'll be able to help you with that. One more thing is that if you are interested in seeing any of our new additions, I have those out on the table here on display, but I can send free samples of any of the textbooks. It's limited, but if you're interested in seeing any textbooks and learning more about them, I can send samples to your school. So come talk to me about that. And now we have a short video about BJU Press. Thank you. Oh, you know what though? Paul, don't show the video yet. I'm supposed to pray for our meal, so I'll do that now so I can exit the stage. All right. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for your loving kindness that you show to us every single day. I thank you for this opportunity for these Christian educators to come and learn more about how to better serve you. And I thank you, Lord, for the food that you provided and how you provide for us in our daily needs. In Jesus' name, amen.
culture of shifting ideas and conflicting voices, students need a solid foundation built on the one book that makes a world of difference. They need to know who God is, who they are, and how to live in God's world. For 50 years, BJU Press has supported Christian educators in their efforts to lay the right foundation so the next generation can serve God and serve others. We believe the Bible is the ultimate authority for all learning. Our materials align with that authority, offering academic rigor and faithfulness to a biblical worldview. We want our students to understand that the Bible speaks to every discipline, preparing them for the workforce and teaching them to use their knowledge for the glory of God and the good of others. Real-world examples and critical thinking questions encourage students to analyze and think through problems, essential skills for answering life's foundational questions and for living out a biblical worldview. BJU Press assists further by offering instructional resources and convenient technology options for in-person and distance learning settings. Educating students is an important and weighty task, and that's why we do what we do. Because the Bible is the one book that can truly make a world of difference in and through the lives of our students.